15 doctors at the hospital can't save. The billionaire, black genius. Janitor's son sees what nobody. The alarms in room 901 screamed like a flock of metal birds, sharp and cold and endless. Lights flashed red over the door. Nurses rushed in and out with tight faces and fast hands. Oxygen hissed. The monitors spit out jagged lines that jumped and fell like a tiny city skyline breaking apart. On the hallway floor outside, a mop slid over the tiles in slow circles. The boy holding it moved like he was part of the building itself. Quiet, quick, almost invisible. His name was Malik Carter. He was 14, thin, brown-skinned, and bright-eyed. He had grown up in these halls the way some kids grow up in backyards. His mother, Yvonne, cleaned the night shift. She told him often, "Head down, work hard, don't make noise." But tonight, the noise was a storm. And the storm was inside room 901, where a billionaire lay dying while the whole hospital seemed to hold its breath. This was the night of when 15 doctors at the hospital can't save the billionaire black genius janitor's son sees what nobody. And it began with a mop, a whisper, and a choice that would change many lives. Malik had learned long ago to watch without being seen. He watched faces. He watched hands. He watched screens that most people ignored. He watched the way fear moved through a hallway like wind. He watched the pain in his mom's eyes when her back hurt, but she kept going anyway. Shoulders straight, voice kind. Yvonne had been a nurse in another country once, before papers got tangled and money got thin and promises turned into closed doors. Now she scrubbed floors no one thanked her for. She told Malik to study. She told him he was made for more. She made flashcards for him on index cards she bought with coupons. She never said the word genius, but she saw it, plain as sunrise. What he saw tonight felt even sharper than that. Through the sliver of the half-open door, Malik could see the private suite where a famous man lay. Archer Vale, software empire, rockets, smart cars, a name that made newspapers lean forward, was a pale shape under a swarm of tubes. 15 doctors had pressed around him in waves for an hour, then 2, then more. They were the best in the city. The best in the country, someone said. But the monitors kept shouting. The oxygen kept blasting. The billionaire's lips were turning a strange color. Not the kind of blue Malik had seen before. This was gray-blue, almost brown. And the number on the pulse ox screen, 85%, didn't change. Not when they turned up the oxygen. Not when they changed masks. Not when they barked new orders and shoved new syringes into his IV line. "Malik," Yvonne whispered, pulling his sleeve. Her hands were raw from bleach. Her hair was tied back tight. There were faint circles under her eyes from years of lost sleep. "Keep moving, baby. We finish this wing and go home. No attention. You hear me?" He nodded because he loved her. He nodded because he knew rules. But his eyes slid back to the tiny storm inside room 901. The rhythm on the heart monitor stuttered. A tall woman in a white coat said, "Push morphine." "He's fighting the vent." Another voice snapped, "Already pushed." No response. A third voice, steady and deep, called, "Draw another blood gas." Why is his SAT still 85 on 100%? Somebody swore softly. Somebody else said, "I don't like this." The words sunk into Malik's skin. He had spent 3 summers reading medical books from the thrift store and the free bin outside the library. Not because he wanted to be a doctor to be rich or famous, but because the body felt like a puzzle, and puzzles were his favorite thing in the world. He had made a science fair project about water contaminants and oxygen in blood. He had watched videos about cyanosis and oxygen curves and the strange cases that stumped whole hospitals. There was one thing he could not forget, how the pulse ox number sometimes lied. Not about the number itself, but about what it meant. He moved closer to the window of the room. The glass was tinted, but the door stood ajar, and he could see enough. The lead doctor tonight, a calm woman with careful eyes and a badge that read DR. Amina Bello leaned over the bed. "He's not responding to anything," she said to a younger doctor beside her. "Sepsis panel negative. Troponins are normal. No stroke on CT, no PE on CT angio. No carbon monoxide. Carboxyhemoglobin normal. Why is he gray?" Her voice was soft, but it cut through the air like a bright blade. The younger doctor swallowed. "Could be shock." "From what?" she said. The nurse at the head of the bed tried to place another line and frowned. "The blood looks weird," she said. "It's brown." The word ran down Malik's spine like ice. Brown. He remembered his experiment with old spinach and well water and how he had shaken the tube and the blood stayed chocolate brown instead of turning bright red. He remembered the phrase from a book he read under a blanket with a flashlight because the apartment lights had to be off after 10. Methemoglobinemia. He remembered another line. Pulse ox stuck in the mid-80s and does not improve with oxygen. He did not remember everything. He was 14, not a machine, but the shape of the idea snapped into place with a click he could almost hear. He did not plan to speak. He really did not. He knew what happened when people like him spoke in rooms like these. He had seen his mother scolded for sweeping too close to a VIP's shoes. He had seen how security guards smiled with no smile in their eyes. He knew all the ways power made itself heavy. But he also knew how it felt to stand still while someone got hurt. The mop handle felt slick in his palm. His throat was dry. He stepped closer to the door, just a step, just enough to see the nurse draw more blood into a small syringe. The blood looked like melted chocolate. It did not look like red. The pulse ox stayed 85. A man in a suit at the corner, security probably, noticed Malik and narrowed his eyes. Malik's chest burned. He knew he had one chance and it would close fast. He lifted a hand, small and shaking. "Dr. Bello?" he said, very soft, almost a breath. The security man moved at once, a big shape with a clipped voice. "Step back. This is a private—" But Dr. Bello's head turned. She had the kind of face that listened even when she did not want to. Her eyes found the boy. They were tired and bright at the same time. "Yes," she said. Malik swallowed. He pointed at the syringe with the brown blood. "If it stays brown when you shake it," he said, "and the oxygen number is stuck at 85 no matter what, and his lips are gray, maybe it isn't his lungs. Maybe his blood can't carry the oxygen. You should do co-oximetry. It checks for methemoglobin." The security man snorted. "Kid, get out." But the nurse who had said brown looked at the syringe like it had started to glow. Dr. Bello's hand lifted, palm gentle, and the guard stopped. Her face changed in a small way, a tiny spark of interest waking up behind the lines of worry. "What did you just say?" she asked. Malik's ears rang. He said the word slowly so he would not trip over it. "Methemoglobinemia." He added, softer, "I read about it." The younger doctor blinked. "But we ruled out carbon monoxide." "Not CO," Malik said, careful. "Methemoglobin. It's different. The number on the pulse ox looks real, but it's fake. The blood looks like chocolate. Oxygen won't help. There's medicine. It's blue." His mind had already pulled the color out of memory. Methylene blue. Antidote. For 3 seconds, no one moved. The monitors filled the silence with a flat tone that made Malik's teeth ache. Then Dr. Bello spoke without taking her eyes off the syringe. "Get a co-ox," she said, voice steady. "Now." The nurse nodded and moved like she had been waiting to do exactly this. The younger doctor started to say something about how rare it was, then bit the words back and ran for the lab phone. The security man huffed and crossed his arms but did not push Malik away. Yvonne stood frozen by her cart, one hand on a rag, one hand clenched at her side. Her eyes met her son's for a breath. Fear and love and pride flashed across her face like brief lightning. She said nothing. She did not have to. Inside the room, they drew another blood sample and sent it to the lab for co-oximetry. Malik tried not to shake. He counted the dots in the ceiling tile to keep his hands steady. He wanted to disappear and also to stay rooted to this tile forever. He wanted to be right, and he was afraid of being wrong, and he was more afraid of being too late. 5 minutes can be nothing in a normal night. 5 minutes in a crisis is a lifetime. The lab called. The nurse put the phone on speaker. A voice that sounded bored and careful read the numbers. Methemoglobin level 42%. Something heavy fell away from Dr. Bello's shoulders and something harder rose in her spine. Get the methylene blue, she said. Pharmacy, stat, dose at 1 milligram per kilogram. Check G6PD status if we can, but we don't have time to wait. The room woke up like a machine catching a spark. People moved in a new pattern. The young doctor ran. The nurse squeezed Archer Vale's hand and whispered in his ear, even though he could not hear. "Stay," she said. "Stay with us." The security man looked baffled and a little angry, which made him look more human than before. Yvonne pressed her lips together and blinked hard. Malik stared at the door as if the antidote could walk through it faster if he believed enough. He thought about the color blue filling a clear tube and chasing the brown out of a man's blood. He thought about little things that make big changes. Salt in water, a wire in a wall, a word in a quiet voice. The antidote came up from pharmacy in a clear bag that held a liquid the color of the deep sea. The nurse hung it fast. The line ran into Archer Vale's arm. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the pulse ox number, which had been a stubborn 85 for an hour, twitched to 86. Then 88. Then 90. The gray in his lips faded like a shadow stepping back from a window. The brown shade in the bloodline blushed toward red as if someone had opened a curtain inside each cell. The machine changed its song. The beep was still fast, still worried, but it was less wild. A collective breath moved through the room and slipped out into the hallway, where it washed over Malik and Yvonne like warm air. Dr. Bello closed her eyes for half a heartbeat and then opened them again, focused and full of the next 10 steps. "We're not out of it," she said. "Keep running the infusion. Watch blood pressure. Watch urine output. Repeat co-ox in 15. See if there's ongoing exposure." She looked up and her gaze found the nurse's cart where, besides normal supplies, someone had dropped a small amber bottle with a sloppy label. The letters were smudged, but one line showed through. Naclo 2. Another line, Immune Detox, Wellness IV Add-in. "Where did that come from?" Dr. Bello asked. Her voice was quiet in a dangerous way. The young doctor, breathless from the run, glanced at the bottle and frowned. "That's not saline," he said. "It's sodium chloride." "Who?" The nurse at the head of the bed looked confused. The private concierge team brought in a bag earlier. Said it was the patient's regular supplement. Cleared by his personal doctor. Dr. Bello's jaw tightened. "Get that out of here," she said. "Bag it. Chain of custody. Now." She looked at the billionaire's assistant standing in the corner in a black dress, hands shaking. "Did you authorize this?" The assistant, Sierra Cho, swallowed. I thought it was safe. He takes it at home when he's tired." The security man, whose badge read D. Crane, ran a hand over his jaw. "That bottle was on the cart when we came in," he said. "But I didn't see who left it." Malik's stomach flipped. He remembered his water experiment again. Sodium nitrites. Chlorites. Same story. They can turn hemoglobin into something that can't carry air. He had read about it in a paper he barely understood, but he understood enough. Some wellness stuff could hurt you bad. The antidote could save you, but only if the poison stopped. They repeated the co-ox. The methemoglobin level dropped to 18%, then to 8. The gray lifted from Archer Vale's skin. He was not awake yet, but the fight in his body changed shape. It was no longer drowning in air it could not carry. It was the steady work of a body trying to wake from a dark river. Dr. Bello allowed herself a thin smile. "Good," she said. "Good." She turned to the door where Malik stood small and still. In her eyes there was thanks. In her eyes there was also a question. "How did you know?" she asked. Malik's face went hot. He shrugged, a tiny lift like a scared bird. "I read stuff," he said, "and I did a project. With water and nitrates. The book said the blood stays brown. The number on the screen gets stuck. I just remembered." The security man exhaled through his nose and looked away, as if accepting something he did not like and could not argue. Yvonne stepped forward and touched Malik's shoulder. Her hand was warm and shaking. "We should go," she said softly, like she was reminding him there were still rules in the world. Dr. Bello shook her head once. "Stay," she said. Please." The hospital's quiet turned into a different kind of busy in the hours that followed. The toxicology team arrived and took over a corner with clipboards and calm voices. They tested the bottle. They tested the IV bag that had been hung early by the concierge nurse who had since disappeared down a stairwell. They made calls. They spoke in simple words on purpose for the benefit of the assistant who kept saying, "I'm sorry," in a voice that sounded like it could break. The lab confirmed. The wellness add-in was a strong oxidizer. It could cause methemoglobinemia. It had no business inside a human vein unless you wanted to make that human very sick. The hospital's legal department showed up with neat hair and hard eyes. Security traced a path through camera feeds to see who carried what and when. Detective Nora Briggs from the city police took notes and asked quiet questions that made people swallow twice before answering. Through it all, Malik and Yvonne stood near the door with their mop and their cart and their tired legs, as if a line of tape on the floor kept them from falling off the world. When Archer Vale finally opened his eyes, it was past dawn. The night had burned itself into a pale gray morning. Rain tapped the tall window like soft fingers. The machines were quieter now. The room smelled like bleach and plastic and something green from the little plant by the window that the nurse watered at the end of every shift. Dr. Bello leaned in and asked Archer basic questions: name, place, day. His voice was rough, but it worked. He answered slowly, then faster. He rubbed his lips and looked down at his hand, turning it palm up, palm down, as if making sure it belonged to him. He looked at the window. He looked at the team. And then, because sometimes the eyes find what they are meant to find, he looked at the small boy by the door and the woman keeping a soft hand on the boy's shoulder. "Who?" he began. Dr. Bello followed his gaze. "That," she said, and her voice warmed, "is Malik. He noticed what we didn't. He asked a brave question at the right time." Archer Vale's face did something odd. For a moment, he did not look like a man who owned rockets or glass towers. He looked like a person who had just come back from a place where names are nothing. He nodded once as if the nod had weight. "Thank you," he said to Malik. His voice was deeper now, steady. "I mean it." Malik blinked and looked at his shoes. "You're welcome," he murmured. Yvonne squeezed his shoulder and said, "Sir, my son is—" "He reads a lot." The detective cleared her throat. "Mr. Vale, we're looking into how that bottle got here," she said, holding up a plastic evidence bag with the amber glass inside. "Do you have any enemies who might exploit your trust in wellness products?" It was an odd question. It was also the right one. Archer's eyes shifted to his assistant. Sierra's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry," she said again. "Your private doctor swore by it. He gave me a box. I didn't know." Archer's mouth went thin. "We will speak to him," he said. His voice was cold on that line, but when he turned back to Malik, it warmed by a few degrees. "You must come back," he said. "I want to talk to you when my head is less fog." By noon, the building had a new breath. The emergency cooled into paperwork. The storm fell away from room 901 and moved to conference rooms where people in suits tried to turn lightning into neat paragraphs. Yvonne signed out at the supply closet with a pen that dragged and a smile that would not leave her mouth. Malik walked beside her down the back stairs, past the wall where scuffed paint showed where gurneys had banged for years. They stepped out into the damp day. The city smelled like wet dust and coffee. Traffic made a slow river sound at the corner. They stood under the hospital awning for a minute, not speaking. Then Yvonne turned and pulled her son into a long, fierce hug that bent him forward and made his breath stutter. "You were brave," she said into his hair. "You were wise. You were kind. I am proud of you." He hugged her back with all the strength in his thin arms. "I was scared," he said. "I know," she said, smiling. "That's what brave means." The next week moved like a dream and like hard work at the same time. Reporters camped by the curb until security set up a line they could not cross. A video clip leaked. A nurse's phone had caught a boy's quiet voice saying a long, strange word. A talk show wanted to book Malik. A famous university sent an email that made Yvonne sit down fast on a kitchen chair because the world had never said full scholarship to her before. But Malik still had math homework. Yvonne still worked nights. Bills still came. Life did not stop being life because the internet learned a new name. The difference was how people looked at them in the hall now. Some smiled with real joy, some with heavy envy. Some looked away like they had before. But many looked with respect. That part felt new. Dr. Bello found them in the cafeteria one afternoon and sat with them at a small table by the window where the sun made the plastic chairs look kinder than they were. She brought Malik a thick book with glossy pages full of cases and puzzles. "You have the mind for this," she said. "If you want it." He traced the edge of the cover with one finger. "I do," he said simply. 2 days later, Archer Vale arrived with fewer wires and more color in his face. He wore a soft gray sweater and walked carefully, like someone who remembered how it felt to fall. Security kept a quiet shell around him, but he waved them back a little when he stepped into the cafeteria and saw Yvonne and Malik and Dr. Bello at the window table. His eyes were gentle in a way that did not fit the photos in magazines. He shook Yvonne's hand and then Malik's, and he held the boy's hand for an extra second as if measuring something invisible and finding it steady. "I owe you both," he said. "More than I can say." Yvonne opened her mouth to protest. People like them were taught not to accept big words, but he went on. "I was wrong to trust a fashion of health without true science. That is on me. The police tell me my private doctor was not careful. They tell me my chief financial officer encouraged him to bring his miracle add-ins to dinners and retreats. They tell me those bottles were on our private clinic's shelves. I signed that off. I did not ask enough questions." The word chief financial officer hung in the air like a bell. "Is he in trouble?" Malik asked, eyes wide. Archer's jaw set. "He is," he said. "He will be. People made choices. They will answer for them." Archer set a neat folder on the table and looked at Yvonne. "You have been the backbone of this building for years, and nobody asked how your back felt," he said. "That is wrong. I am funding a program in your name, the Yvonne Carter Fellowship. Scholarships, paid internships, living stipends, for hospital support staff and their children who want to study science or nursing or medicine or engineering. It starts now." Yvonne's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled. "Sir, I don't—" she began, and then she laughed a watery laugh because what do you say to a miracle that arrives wearing a sweater and soft shoes? Archer turned to Malik. "And you," he said, "if you ever want a lab, you have one. If you want a mentor, you have one. If you want a job when you are grown, you have one. If you want to say no to all of that and find your own path, I will clap for you anyway." Malik swallowed and nodded, because words felt small in his throat. "I want to learn," he said. "I want to help people breathe." Archer smiled. "Good answer," he said. There were more days after that with ordinary problems. The sink leaked. The bus was late. A shoe sole came loose. A quiz went wrong. But there were also afternoons in the hospital library where Malik and Dr. Bello sat over case studies and made small drawings of molecules on scratch paper and laughed at jokes only they would find funny. There were mornings when Yvonne trained new staff with a firm kindness that made them straighten their shoulders and take pride in a job that had always been hard and now felt seen. There were meetings where Archer listened more than he talked. There were policy changes that banned private add-ins that had not been fully tested and approved. There were posters that said in large, plain words, "We listen to every voice." Sometimes a visitor would stop Malik in the hall and say, "You're the kid." He would smile and say, "I'm Malik." And he would keep going. Because he had places to be. One evening, months later, Malik stood again outside room 901. It was quiet now. The bed was empty. The machines were off. The window showed a sunset that turned the city gold and soft. He held a book in his hands. He could hear his mother talking with a new staff member down the hall in her warm, clear voice. He could smell bleach and coffee and the clean bite of winter air coming in each time the front doors opened. He closed his eyes for a second and saw that night again. The red lights, the brown blood, the number that would not move, his own small hand lifted in a room where small hands were not supposed to lift. He felt again the way courage had not felt like a roar, but like a whisper you decide to trust. He opened his eyes and smiled. When he turned, Archer Vale was there in the doorway, hands in his pockets, looking out at the same sky. "Big day tomorrow," Archer said. "You start the summer program." Malik nodded, a quick, bright movement. "I'm nervous," he admitted. Archer chuckled. "So am I," he said. "Every time I try anything new." They stood a while without talking, letting the city change colors in front of them. When the lights in the hall clicked to night mode and the floor seemed to hum with the soft, old song of the building, Yvonne joined them. She took Malik's hand. Her palm was rough with work and perfect with love. "Time to go, baby," she said. Archer looked at them and tipped his head like a gentle bull. "Thank you for saving me," he said to Malik. "Thank you for saving what I might still do." Malik shook his head. "You saved yourself," he said shyly. "I just said a word." Archer's eyes shone. "Sometimes one true word is all a life needs," he replied. They walked out together into the cool evening. The city spread wide and bright, full of stories. The hospital behind them glowed like a steady heart. And the story people would tell, on buses, in break rooms, in classrooms, in homes where parents pressed dreams into their children's hands, was not only about a famous man who almost died. It was about a boy who saw what others missed, and a mother whose quiet strength built a bridge in the dark, and a doctor who listened beyond rank and noise. It was about how science is a lamp, but courage is the hand that lifts it. It was about how wisdom can wear sneakers and push a mop and still change the world. This was the story of 15 doctors at the hospital can't save the billionaire, black genius janitor's son sees what nobody. And its lesson was simple enough for anyone to hold. Listen to every voice, learn with all your heart, and never be afraid to speak the small true word that might save a life.